friend of mine, holding him prisoner. I want him.
Yul Brynner played the...
Yul Brynner was one of the most unforgettable stars in Hollywood history. With his shaved head, powerful voice, and commanding presence, he stood out in a way few actors ever could. For decades, audiences watched him play kings, warriors, gunfighters, and larger-than-life characters. He won awards, earned worldwide fame, and became one of the most recognizable faces in entertainment. To many people, Brynner seemed confident, mysterious, and completely sure of himself. Yet behind the fame and success was a man who carried regrets, personal struggles, and questions about the choices he had made during his long career. Before his death in 1985, Brynner reflected on many parts of his life. Among those reflections was his surprising opinion about one role that became one of the most famous performances of his career. The role brought him renewed attention and helped influence future generations of science fiction films, but it also became a source of mixed feelings for him. To understand why, it is important to look at the remarkable journey that brought him from a troubled childhood to the heights of Hollywood success. Yul Brynner was born on July 11, 1920, in Vladivostok, Russia. His early life was filled with change and uncertainty. When he was still very young, his father left the family, forcing his mother to raise him and his sister alone. The family moved frequently, living in different countries and experiencing very different cultures. These moves exposed Brynner to several languages and ways of life. While many children grew up in one hometown, Brynner learned how to adapt wherever he went. This ability would later become one of his greatest strengths as an actor. During his teenage years in Paris, he developed a love for music and performance. He played guitar in nightclubs and entertained audiences long before he ever stepped onto a movie set. Those early experiences taught him how to capture attention and hold it. Even at a young age, he seemed to understand that performing was not only about talent but also about creating a memorable image. Over time, he carefully shaped himself into someone people could not easily forget. That mysterious image followed him throughout his entire career and helped make him a star. His breakthrough came when he entered the world of theater. After working in smaller productions, he received an opportunity that changed everything. In 1951, he was cast as King Mongkut in the Broadway musical The King and I. To prepare for the role, he shaved his head completely, a bold decision that immediately made him stand out. Audiences were fascinated by his appearance and his commanding performance. The show became a huge success, running for years and turning Brynner into a major star almost overnight. Critics praised his work, and theatergoers could not stop talking about him. The role earned him a Tony Award and eventually led to the film version of The King and I. When the movie was released, Brynner's popularity grew even larger. His performance won him the Academy Award for Best Actor, making him one of the most respected performers in the industry. The role became so closely connected to his identity that many people found it difficult to separate the actor from the character. Throughout his life, he returned to the role thousands of times on stage, making it one of the longest-running relationships between an actor and a character in entertainment history. Following his success in The King and I, Brynner became one of Hollywood's most sought-after stars. He appeared in major films such as The Ten Commandments, Anastasia, and The Magnificent Seven. These movies showed that he could do far more than play a single type of character. Whether he was portraying a powerful ruler, a heroic gunfighter, or a dramatic historical figure, he brought intensity and confidence to every role. During the 1950s and 1960s, his career reached extraordinary heights. Studios competed to hire him, and audiences around the world admired his unique screen presence. Unlike many actors who depended on charm alone, Brynner projected strength and authority. He seemed larger than life whenever he appeared on screen. At the same time, his personal life was often complicated. He experienced multiple marriages, public affairs, and personal conflicts. Friends and colleagues described him as ambitious and determined, qualities that helped him succeed but sometimes created difficulties in his relationships. Despite these challenges, his reputation as a major star remained strong. By the late 1960s, he had achieved a level of fame that few actors ever reach. However, the entertainment industry was changing. New stars were emerging, audience tastes were shifting, and the types of movies that had made Brynner famous were becoming less popular. As the 1970s began, he found that major film roles were harder to obtain. While he continued working, he no longer enjoyed the same level of demand he had experienced during his peak years. It was during this period that he accepted a role that would unexpectedly reshape part of his legacy. In 1973, Brynner starred in Westworld, a science fiction film about a futuristic amusement park populated by lifelike robots. In the movie, he played a robotic gunslinger who turns deadly when the park's technology fails. At first glance, the role seemed very different from the characters that had made him famous. Instead of portraying a king or heroic leader, he played a machine with little emotion and almost no humanity. Brynner approached the role with remarkable discipline. He moved carefully, spoke very little, and created a cold, unsettling presence that frightened audiences. The performance became one of the most memorable parts of the film and helped make Westworld a success. Over time, many critics came to view the robotic gunslinger as one of the most influential science fiction villains ever created. As the years passed, the importance of Westworld only continued to grow. What had started as a modest science fiction film eventually became recognized as a groundbreaking movie that influenced many later productions. Audiences were fascinated by the idea of machines that looked and behaved like humans. Brynner's performance played a major role in making that concept believable. His robotic gunslinger was calm, relentless, and terrifying because he showed almost no emotion. Unlike many villains who shouted or displayed obvious anger, Brynner's character simply kept moving forward with a cold determination. This approach made him feel more dangerous than many traditional movie villains. Film historians have often pointed out that the character helped create the model for later robotic antagonists. Years later, when Arnold Schwarzenegger prepared to play the Terminator, he openly acknowledged that Brynner's performance had influenced his approach. The connection between the two characters is easy to see. Both are machines disguised as humans. Both move with purpose and speak very little. Both become frightening because they appear almost unstoppable. Because of this influence, Brynner's work in Westworld became an important part of science fiction history. Yet despite the praise the role received, Brynner reportedly developed complicated feelings about it. While audiences celebrated the performance, he sometimes felt that people focused too heavily on the robot character and overlooked the many other achievements of his long career. After decades spent building a reputation as a serious actor capable of handling musicals, dramas, and historical epics, being remembered primarily as a machine was not necessarily the legacy he had imagined for himself. This feeling became more understandable when considering everything he had accomplished before Westworld. By the time he accepted the role, Brynner had already spent more than 20 years at the top of the entertainment world. He had won major awards, starred in some of Hollywood's biggest productions, and created one of the most iconic stage performances ever seen on Broadway. The King and I alone had consumed a huge portion of his life. He performed the role thousands of times, returning to it repeatedly because audiences never seemed to grow tired of watching him. For many actors, playing the same character for decades would feel limiting, but Brynner viewed the role as both a challenge and a responsibility. He understood that audiences expected a certain level of excellence every time he stepped onto the stage. As a result, he worked tirelessly to maintain the quality of his performances. Even when his health began to decline, he continued appearing as the King of Siam. The role had become deeply connected to his identity. It brought him fame, fortune, and recognition. Yet it also required enormous sacrifices. Time spent on stage often meant time away from family and personal relationships. Brynner's dedication to his work sometimes created tension in his marriages and private life. Looking back, he likely understood that success always came with a cost. The very qualities that helped him become famous, discipline, ambition, and determination, sometimes made it difficult for him to maintain balance in other areas of his life. Away from the spotlight, Brynner's personal life was often as dramatic as the characters he portrayed on screen. He married 4 times and experienced numerous romantic relationships throughout his life. Many of these relationships began passionately but struggled under the pressures of fame and constant travel. Brynner spent much of his career moving between film sets, theaters, and promotional events. Maintaining a stable family life under those circumstances was never easy. His first marriage lasted longer than the others, but eventually it also ended in divorce. The pattern repeated itself several times over the years. Friends often described him as charismatic and charming, qualities that attracted people to him. At the same time, he could be intensely focused on his career. The demands of acting frequently took priority over everything else. As he grew older, Brynner became more reflective about these choices. He understood that success in Hollywood had brought extraordinary opportunities, but it had also contributed to personal disappointments. Some relationships ended because of his absences, while others suffered from the constant attention that comes with celebrity. Despite these challenges, he remained devoted to his children and maintained strong connections with many people throughout his life. His experiences taught him that fame could not solve every problem. Even the most successful individuals faced regrets and difficult decisions. In many ways, these personal struggles made him a more complex and interesting figure than the confident image audiences saw on screen. Another side of Brynner that many people rarely discuss was his commitment to humanitarian work. While much of the entertainment press focused on his movies and personal relationships, he devoted significant time to helping refugees and raising awareness about global issues. In the late 1950s, he worked closely with refugee organizations and traveled to camps in different parts of the world. Rather than simply lending his name to a cause, he actively visited communities and spoke directly with people who had been displaced by conflict and hardship. These experiences had a profound effect on him. They exposed him to suffering that many celebrities never witnessed firsthand. Brynner used his fame to draw attention to these issues and encourage public support for humanitarian efforts.